Randy, thanks for being here.
Thank you for having me.
No idea what we're going to talk about, but first time we talked, we went and just had a really good relationship. For those of you that haven't met Randy Bryant yet, our interaction was initially we met at a wrestling tournament in, I think, San Antonio?
New Braunfels. Yep.
New Braunfels, yeah.
The New Braunfels elite tournament.
Oh, that's right.
It was the first, I want to say, freestyle Greco tournament of the season.
Yeah.
Which, like, strangely enough, the end of this month would be the first one again. So it's crazy, right?
That is crazy. It comes full circle. And that was 2-3 years ago?
2-3 years ago.
2 or 3 years ago.
Yep.
We had, I think it was first year we were here. I don't remember. But I think I identified Chicago, Beat the Street Chicago sweatshirt. And I'm like, hey.
Yes.
And that was, it was funny because I bring it up just at the start of it because relationships matter.
Yes.
And little nuances, what do you have in common, whatever, this connecting point.
Yes.
And so some people like me grew up not liking small talk, trivia. But on the other hand, when you see that and, had you not been wearing that and whatever, we may have seen each other around, but a commonality. So to me, my connection to that was Mike Powell in Chicago came and told me what they were doing, and I had a lot of respect for what he'd done. But more, I love the sport.
Yes.
What it did for me, what it does for others. And I guess I'd heard of Beat the Streets when Burroughs and Chamizo wrestled in New York outside.
And that was like the big thing. Everybody's like, it was right there on Times Square. And
that was cool.
And it was.
And it was like at night, and Matt was like slick from the condensation. And
it just got everybody's attention. It got everybody's attention. And the crazy thing about it is growing up in Chicago, I was part of it and didn't even really know it. And it's like hindsight is 20/20.
Yeah.
And a lot of everything that I've been doing now has been because of hindsight being 20/20.
Yeah.
And people may say, is that the only sweatshirt he has? Because at every tournament I wear it, or I wear a hat, or I wear something that because I know, right? You talked about Chamizo and Burroughs that match. I try to do that as like this flag, like, hey, look, small talk.
Yeah.
Like,
and also like that to me personified something like hat tip to Chamizo. He flew over here. He was in France or wherever.
Most definitely.
And there's no, it's a sport that unifies people. And I think that's one of the things that I really, the best asset I have is people I know. And I'm aspiring to introduce people I know to people I know.
Yes.
And, some people think there's this cookie cutter approach. But there's this idea that there's a path you go through in life and you follow these little roads and it's successful. And you and I both know that's not true.
Not at all.
And, the idea is like, when I see people who have passion, energy, drive, they inspire me, I know they are inspired.
Yes.
And they're inspire others. And so that's what, I'm looking forward to learning stuff I don't know yet. But, most of what you and I have talked about has to do with when you see a light come on.
Yes.
With a kid or with a parent or just in society.
In general, yes. Everyone, yeah.
And conversely, what depletes people? Division, strife,
Yes.
Power struggles, politics, all that garbage.
Yes.
And I love how that doesn't have to be the case.
It doesn't.
So, and I think that common bond, in athletics, you obviously know a lot of what you're doing. You know the sport well. You know kids well.
Yes.
Well, where did that start? Like, what's the origin story here?
Well, I was talking earlier about it. I've been around and coaching sports since I was 18. So I graduated early. I was 17. So I was a young kid.
Yeah. And where was that? Where'd you go?
Chicago, South Side Chicago, Inglewood. I grew up Damon and Marquette. Mm-hmm. My home school was Harper High School. If anybody know anything about Harper High School, it's actually shut down right now in Chicago. Right, they closed it. But I remember
for good.
For good, yes, they closed it down. That was my neighborhood school, 65th and Wood. I grew up in Damon and Marquette. So I traveled actually an hour and a half to go to my high school, which was Curie High School on the southwest side of Chicago. At that time, it was selective enrollment. You had to test to get into it, and they had all these different programs. It's a really big basketball and IB program school.
Yeah.
So.
I didn't know that IB program there.
Yes. It's one of the best IB programs in the city. One of the
yeah.
hardest ones today to get into.
You want to explain that for folks that aren't sure?
Yes. So IB program is the pronunciation of IB is inter something bachelorette, something like that. Something.
Yeah, exactly.
It's
So we have
something like that.
and
I wasn't an
we're
IB
gonna
student.
get-
My son's an IB
I'm
student.
going to get it. International Baccalaureate.
Yeah, international
Yes,
baccalaureate.
sorry.
There it is. Yes, it is. Yes, it is. There you go.
Yeah.
And and strangely enough, my son's an IB student at Leander High School here. But yeah, my home school being Harper High School, right? And I knew the strife of Harper High School, and it was really tough school.
Yeah.
Right? Statistically going there, it was going to be really hard to succeed.
Did you have the drive and the desire and the vision to go to a different school, or was that someone else who influenced you to say, do what you can to get?
I had my older brother. My older brother, he very smart guy, but he, in my opinion, paved the way or set the tone for what I need to do and what I need to be involved with to be successful. He did go to Harper High School, and he had his choice to go to different high schools in the city, but he chose to go to the neighborhood high school, and he had a lot of trouble there. He graduated and made it out, but seeing that trouble, I knew that I didn't want to. That's not what I'm not built for that.
Sometimes the best lessons are from other people's mistakes.
Indeed. Yes,
right?
indeed.
That's what. My best mistakes are made by others, I think.
Yes.
So, how many siblings? You have a brother?
2. I have an older brother and I have a younger brother. My older brother was a football player and he was a wrestler. And being a younger brother, what do you want to do? You want to do everything? The older brother.
And you're going to be wrestled upon, so you might as well wrestle. Yeah.
Yes, indeed. So he was. I tell people all the time he was a much better athlete than I was. And the benefits of being a younger brother is you get to do that.
You get more
I
cycles.
need to be strong, right? So I better start lifting. I need to practice. I need not to hang out over here. I need not. So I learned a lot of things which better prepared me for my academic and athletic journey in high school. And I had another friend, which was his friend, right? He went to Curie High School, and he I think it was 8th grade graduation, and it was like towards the end of the year, and we were driving around because he was driving, and he drove us to Curie High School, and he was like, "Yo, this is Curie," and I was like, "Yeah, this is where I want to go." It's 3,000 plus kids, great facilities. I was like, "Yeah, this is where I want to go. This is where I want to go."
And they had transportation?
No, I traveled an hour and a half on the bus. Traveled through 20, 30.
City bus?
Yes. 20, 30 probably gang neighborhoods every day for 4 years. Well,
burning up CTA passes.
2 years until I got my license and I drove. And then I had my best friend to this day, Thomas Moore and Henry Moore. I would catch a ride with them. He was a year older than me, so we would drive to school. Yeah. And it was crazy because if I had 25 cents, he had 75 cents. He had gas. So that's perfect. So that's how we got to school every day. So yeah, but it was fortunate because we avoided all the pitfalls and stuff like that from riding the CT Chicago Transit Authority. Woo, that could get tricky and dangerous. So
yeah, and it's interesting. I mean, both of us having lived in Chicago, where everybody blames everybody for it. It's like, hey man, this is like I don't know what administration's in there, left, right, center, up, down. It's just the dedication to I don't know what it is, a lack of commitment to something. None of the philosophies seem to be working, and
none.
At some point you recognize that and you figure it out, like you did. Yeah. I'm going to make a different choice to better myself.
I ended up going to Curie High School and my major being computer science, and nice. that was a quest in itself as well.
Why computer science? What was the attraction to that?
Business. It was like the business program, and then you get to choose these different tracks. So you could have chose accounting, you could have just chose like business, and I mean this is like late '90s, so we were working on the green screen. Yeah, like it was really.
You were languages rewriting, and then COBOL.
I wrote in BASIC, COBOL, Pascal. It was I C++. Java's like towards my senior year. Yeah, I learned all those languages in high school. That was, and it kind of wows people that when they learned that about me as well. It was like,
And that was offered in high school? Because you had a
Yes.
high school, and again, the international baccalaureate schools have a more of an international standard.
yes,
U.S. is way behind.
yes, way.
And I've lived in Europe, and it's like not that the British schools weren't like that much better, but they were just what maybe we used to be in the standard at. So that's actually interesting that you had that, because it's funny. My the last language I programmed in was COBOL, long time ago.
And I hate it.
Oh, it's terrible. It's terrible. That I think was it one of the airlines? I don't know, some old legacy thing. The other day I was dealing with somebody, and they were doing one of these things, and their core, I don't miss the airline. Their core program was still running on COBOL.
Well, you know what the rule is: if it ain't broke, don't fix it.
Yeah, and there's probably people that still, there's like 10 people that can still
Work
work on it.
program that is like a go-to statement. Are you serious?
It's like track wrestling. Track wrestling must be built on basic. Nobody knows what that means, but it's standing joke in the wrestling community.
Shout out to track wrestling.
Yeah. Hey, Flo, get that thing up and going, man. Flow Arena is supposed to replace it. You get old. Anyway, we love you. We love you. Just step it up.
Yes, indeed. Yes.
Step it up. So, all right. So, high school. What sports you playing in high school?
Football and wrestling.
Yeah. And position in football is what?
I was a linebacker.
Oh, so you were fast and tough. Or you were supposed to be fast and tough.
Yeah, I was supposed to.
Yeah, that's the profile.
So that's the funny story of how I even got into wrestling. Right? I didn't want to wrestle. I didn't want to wrestle. In my mind, I was going to be a football player, right? Mm-hmm. I did not play my freshman year because I couldn't play any sports. My mom said, she's like, two things. One, she was like, I want to see grades first. If you can get a grade 3.0 above GPA, then you can play. And she says, financially, I can't afford for you to going back and forth for practice over the summer. If you got to get there on the weekends and stuff like that, because my mother didn't drive, right? So she was like, financially, just can't do it, right?
It's a big commitment financially.
Yes. So I actually snuck to basketball tryouts my freshman year, right? Because it was crazy, right? So we go into this your big orientation, right? And I meet my coach's son, Jason Acevedo, and he's recruiting. And we're in there, and I've always been this size. So I've always been this size. Freshman year, I'm this big, and he sees me. He said, "Hey, you, come here. You play football?" And I'm terrified. So this is how I know when I'm recruiting kids and trying to get kids to play sports and things like that, that I know the initial, like when you approach them and you ask them to be part of something or something like that, the initial response is going to be no. They're apprehensive. They don't know who you are. Why should I just agree to go somewhere with you and dedicate all this time and energy? Like, I don't know, right? So I know that feeling.
Salespeople pay attention. First response is always no, right? It's uncomfortable.
No, right?
Yeah.
So there's a trust that has to be built in order to, before you even ask them that question. And I was terrified. I know I wanted to play football. I know I did. But he asked me in front of all these people, and I shook up. I froze. I was like, no. And he was like, okay, all right, well, you know what? See you later then, I guess. And then we went on. In my mind, I'm like, oh, I missed my chance. He wanted me to play football. And I'm thinking, like, oh, my God, I missed it. And I waited to the end, and I went to him, and I said, is there still a chance I can play football? Of course there's a chance. I don't know that, though. I'm a 14-year-old kid, right? And he's like, yeah, he gives me the information. I'm excited. I tell my mom, and then she breaks it down to me. He's like, no, I want to see grades, and we can't afford it. I'm in school. I'm not playing football. I'm seeing the football team do just great things. I got my friend, Fernando. He's in class. He got these big old medals on his neck. And I'm like, where'd you get that from? He's like, wrestling. And I'm like, wrestling? He's like, yeah. I was like, my brother wrestled. He's like, yeah, man, you should come out. He ended up being one of my best friends as well. And this was in like algebra class, and he had that big old medal on. I was like, yo, I want that. And I was like, forget it. I'm gonna go to basketball tryouts because I can play basketball. And I sneak on to go to practice, and I make it. And I go home. I tell my mom, I made the team. She said, no, you didn't. I thought I told you that you cannot play.
I made this decision. Good for mom. Yeah.
So after that year, I told myself, I said, financial burden on my mom is not going to be there. I'm going to do it myself. So I got with my counselor. It's funny I remember these names. Martin Cleefish, Mr. Cleefish. I got with him. He got me a summer job. I was painting poles in Chicago.
So what gave you that drive? Like some people like, I can't, and they just accept can't, and that was not an option, or what was it that?
So we lived in this like 3-story type house, like you know how the Chicago is, right? And we grew up in this basement apartment, 600 square feet. Me, my mom, my brothers, we all slept in the same bed. And the people in the neighborhood, like the other kids and stuff like that, we were. It was this house, but we had this big old yard next to it, and you couldn't play with us unless my mom knew you, your people, your parents, your siblings, or whoever they were, right? And they knew us from the kids who just played in the yard. They were really good at sports. So right, I could play basketball, I could do all these things. We had that yard, we throw footballs, we be playing baseball, we be doing all that stuff.
You got the facility.
Yes, indeed.
Yeah, I like it.
And everybody would come over and they'd be looking like, "Hey man, can we play with you guys?" And I'm like, "Nah, you guys like meet my mom and
take a number and apply in there."
Yes, indeed. So she because she knew like a lot of times it started off with innocent plan, and the next thing you know, kids are fighting, and then a fight in Chicago turns out to something totally different. Now I got 20, 30 kids from this block coming over to want to fight because that's their cousins and everybody else and so on. Then you got my cousins and everybody else like, no, you're not gonna beat up my kinfolk and so on. So she knew those types. She tried to just avoid that type of stuff with us, and I knew from my brother I wanted to have the same success he did. So I was like, I want to do this. I want to do this. See, he went to neighborhood high school. He didn't have to travel. He could walk to school. He walked to Ogden Park.
There's no time commitment.
No, it's safer too. He knows all these guys. He knows all those guys, right? I don't know these guys across Pulaski or on 47th or 63rd or whatever these streets are, 55th. Like crossing all these, I don't know them. It's a danger aspect to it.
Yeah, and people that don't know Chicago also might know that it's. When I was first moving there from London, and a guy was telling me this, like Polish people live here, and like it's like segregated is not the word, but it's these communities, micro communities.
Yes.
That it's not a homogenized city. For whatever reason, it's broken up. So we're going to go to this neighborhood and this neighborhood.
And that's the interesting fact, right? So Curie High School is in a Polish neighborhood.
Yeah.
Traditionally, it was a Polish. Pulaski is on Pulaski, right? So it's in a Polish neighborhood, and you have to travel through a predominantly Hispanic neighborhood, then a predominantly black neighborhood, then a predominantly white neighborhood, and an Italian or an Irish neighborhood, and you have to travel through these neighborhoods. And these were scary times during that time as well, right? You had the one kid who was from by the White Sox neighborhood. I forgot his name, but he was riding his bike from the projects, and he was riding it through the neighborhood, and then he was beat. He was beat severely, so by going through the wrong neighborhood, and so these are things that are happening. And she's trying, but I'm determined. I'm like, no, I don't. I got to do it. I want to do it because I know the outcomes of Chicago. I got three things. I got 3 ways to play this. 1, I had to be good academically. 2, I'm either good athletically, or 3, I play the block. I'm not playing the block. I know what the block gets you. I'm either gonna be dead, jail, or the drug dealer becomes a drug user. It's just the way it is.
Yeah, there's no good way out.
No. So I gotta be either athletically, right? Or I gotta be good academically. And I've been big I've been this side. I didn't grow. But I know my coach, when he saw me that first day, he was like, yeah, this kid's going to be big. But
you were, what,
relatively
90th percentile or something?
Yes.
Years?
Yeah. I mean, I'm 5'9", 5'10", coming into high school, right? So he's like, this kid going to get huge. No, I'm sorry, coach, I disappointed you. But lucky for me, moving forward, I get to like high school, like you get to your senior year and stuff like that, they looking at film, they like, this kid playing like he's 6'2", 6'3", but they didn't get in the eye test, he's kind of small. So, but I'm painting poles in Chicago, and that's my summer job, and that's dangerous. We on this like South Side Chicago, painting poles green. And then you got all the thugs on the corner. They're like, yo, you missed the spot, shorty.
Oh, man.
And you're like, yeah, man, thanks. Hey, man, you need some help with that? Like, they just trolling you the whole time. It's funny, too. Like, they're just, you're sweating, but they're like, yo, they just, like, they know the
They're
kid
just playing
is,
with you in their mind.
yeah, they look at him, he's scared. So I used that money. I bought my first pair of cleats. I bought me a skeleton. I bought me a cowboy collar, you know, and I had enough money so I could travel back and forth because, you know, you don't get the bus pass over the summer. And you got to go to, you got to travel back and forth.
That's not cheap.
No, not at all. Not at all. So I got to go to practice over the summer, right? So I'm out there, and I remember I couldn't even I didn't even know how to put on pads. I remember our running back, Ricardo, man, that dude, huge. I holding that pad, he comes, and he's, poof, my helmet like this way. My ear pad was out. It was crazy. But, you know, I picked up the game quick. I was playing fullback. I played switch meet. Lamont Ben came along. He ended up being the Division III all-time running back at McKendree University, right? I think McKendree Division II or Division III.
Two? I don't actually know. I'm guessing.
Yeah, I think they two. But he ended up being like all-time running back there, or a leading rusher for them. But
and this is your sophomore year now.
Yeah, this is my sophomore year, and I'm making waves. Coach is like, all right, cool. We're gonna be able to use you next year for varsity. We're gonna be able to use you. And I didn't know how to drive. Right? Remember I told you my mom didn't drive, right? So we're driving. I'm doing my traffic, and my coaches basically taught me how to drive. And we're having a conversation. He's like, all right, cool. What do you want to play next year? I'm like, linebacker. He's like, cool. Are you wrestling? And I'm like, no. He was like, well, if you want to play linebacker for me, you're going to wrestle.
Texas football coaches, pay attention.
Right? And I'm like, oh, my God, I got to wrestle. So I tell kids this all the time. I started off wrestling, right, because I was forced to do it. And because I was forced to do it, I was the worst teammate. So I understand about making mistakes. I remember I was always this big, so I never really had anybody ever trying to bully me. I was the one doing the bullying.
Yep.
Right? I was like, I know how it is. Right? So the whole time, the sophomore year, I'm getting mopped. I'm getting scraped. But in my mind, I'm telling myself, I'm only doing this because I'm being forced to do it, and I'm really a football player, right? And I'm like picking on the guys who are even good. That's not much of a like how good I was at just being a troll and a pot stirrer. And I remember Brandon McCullough. We had the Bogan Invitational Christmas tournament. It's one of my favorite ones, right? Because it was like you get to go off, you get to go to Bogan High School. Mount Carmel was there, and all these different schools was there. And I was like, oh man, it was big, right? And Brandon is in the semis before he gets to the finals, and I'm such a horrible teammate. He goes, he loses, and I can't wait to troll him. And he gets back, and he's hurt, and I'm like, yo, what's up, Brandon? What happened? You choked. And he turned around and he told me, he said, but guess what? You choke every time. And I was like, God, that hurts. I suck. And everybody's laughing. And I'm like, yeah, I do suck. I'm not good. Right? And that was the switch that turned it. Because that was the motivator. I didn't want to be bad at anything.
So that hurting people hurt people who hurt them back, apparently. But
Yes.
that idea came back full circle. It's interesting how you responded to it, though. That's where I'm looking at, some people would respond to that, fight. Some people respond to it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm no good.
Yeah.
Tail between legs, leave.
Yeah.
But you didn't. Some people say don't kick somebody when they're down. Sometimes kick them, see what happens. But so you responded to that right then? Or what does that mean?
Right hand to the man. My very next match was my first win the entire season. I tech fought the kid.
Just intensity or what?
Yeah, I mean, I didn't win much.
Probably not
after
technique.
That. I think I had 4 matches. I think totally that whole year I won.
What did that feel like though? Like when you turned the intensity on, you had that win. What did that do for you?
You can do it. You can do it, and you gotta effort. And I tell that to the kids all the time. I say effort is everything.
Yeah.
Just having more effort than the person in front of you can will you to a win.
Yeah.
It don't necessarily that person doesn't have to be. You don't have to be technically better than them or out condition them or anything like that. Just having more effort. And at that point, I lacked that. I lacked effort. You know, I really put this thing in my mind that this was just something because I was better at this, and which I wasn't. I was a better wrestler than I was a football player.
Mm-hmm.
Didn't even know that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But if I put more effort in, I would have that I can be successful in it.
Yeah.
You know, and that's what happened. Mm-hmm. You know, junior year came for football. For some reason, I thought that JV football was going to be the same as varsity, and it wasn't. I had to apply more effort. Mm-hmm. Like I tell kids all the time, I say I didn't start my junior year in football. Mm-hmm. I had to wait my turn. There was guys in front of me that was better. I was not as good as I thought I was, and I had to apply effort. I got on the field 5 times as a starter. I started as a nose tackle. I started as a defensive tackle. I started I just waited. I was like, oh, he don't want to pass classes, coach. I'll play a spot. Mm-hmm. I just waited my time, and I tried to get on at every point and gave effort every time I was there, right? And in senior year, I ended up having a breakout year. I was leading the team in tackles, and that's when the newspapers come and they start talking to you and you're doing big things, and they asked me the question. It was like, what was the difference between there and then? I was like, I just told myself I'm not going to give up my senior year. I'm not going to give up my starting spot or the opportunity to start my senior year. And I took that right into wrestling, and then that's what got me to the state tournament.
That's awesome. So how much do those help each other? Like football helping wrestling, wrestling helping football?
Oh, I don't even get recruited for football if I don't wrestle. That was my coach's go-to. Like I come in, right? I don't pass the eye test. I'm a 5'9", 5'10" on a good day, right? Linebacker. And he's like, but he wrestles. And they're like, really? He wrestles? Really? Yeah. All right, we'll talk to him. Right? And then they talk to me about wrestling and they get to see me as a person and my personality. And they're like, okay, well, cool. We'll take a chance on him. We'll take a chance on him.
That's one thing that's fascinating. We both talked about this coming to Texas, where it's such a football state, and yet that correlation isn't there yet for the most part. Where you look at, was it this year? I think was it Iowa? Like I think all of their offense and defensive linemen were all wrestlers. Mm-hmm. Nebraska's nose guard was a guy who was a 4-timer from South Dakota. Right. Just like that stance, balance, technique. Grit. It's pretty cool.
just like I equate wrestling to the blue collar sport. It's the blue collar sport of all the sports. Yep. Like, it's not. You don't get the glit and glamour. Like, it's not like you're gonna do it and get lots of money. Like, it's the guy who wakes up early and leaves late.
Yep. And develops a character that they can look themselves in the mirror
and be like,
yeah, it's true, and it builds. Well, you've invested a lot of years in doing not just for yourself but for others. So so you're so high school. You have great football season. You're state qualifier. Wrestling. What weight was that?
171.
71.
171.
So you probably had to come down.
To Tom Treadway at Mount Carmel.
Oh, you had Mount Carmel guy. Yeah.
It was the craziest thing. First Ronald Stewart, the king, man, he was a thorn in my behind my entire year, my entire senior year. Oh my God. Like I think I had like 8 losses or something like that, and half of them were him. Mm-hmm. Right? And I ended up beating him at the sectional tournament, and then he turned around and beat me at the city tournament. Mm-hmm. But we get to state tournament, and I tell the kids down here, I was like, man, it's a whole different dynamic up there because they keep you in that tunnel. And then once you time to wrestle, you get out there and I have never seen that many people in my life.
First time, you just got to adjust to that, right?
Yes. And
unless you're from like Mount Carmel or Montini, then you're there every year.
And he's there, and I remember I'm trying to figure out who I'm wrestling. I said, "What's Mount Carmel? Okay, cool." Right, and I see this tall white kid, and he's lanky. I'm like, I got him. Yeah, I'm gonna eat them legs up. Yeah, he's tall, right? He's got like, I'm gonna eat them legs.
Big
up.
targets.
Man, I got out there, that boy. I couldn't. He was a spider monkey. I couldn't keep him off my legs. Man, I remember I cross faced him. I cross faced him so hard that he moused up like. He was still on my legs. I was like, this dude is a different animal. He ended up winning state the next year, right? But oh my God, he was a junior and I was a senior. And I was like, and that was the other thing in my head. I'm like, I ain't worried about this.
Junior,
underclassmen. I'm older than him. I tell my son that too. I'd be like, yo, they're gonna underestimate you because of your age. You know, he's a sophomore now. It's gonna be on the other end when he's junior and senior, but he's gonna be looking. He's gonna underestimate. I said, don't do that. But I said, they're gonna underestimate you because of your age. I said, you use that as an advantage. I know because I've been there. I looked at Tom Treadway and I was like,
yeah, that's what's crazy about some of these kids in states. They can like win state in 8th grade. Like that's just freaky talent. But there's some of them do it.
Like the I forgot who was it. The kid that beat Matt Ramos.
Yeah,
he's a high school kid. And he's beating a national place.
Yeah, the guy was a
like
high school senior. Was it? Beat Ramos. I mean, yeah, there were 2 high schoolers that beat top level guys in that same tournament. And it's great, but you know the level. As you know, like when you go from junior to senior year, you went this level.
Yes.
But like, well, there's another level. There's another level.
Yes.
Everywhere you go, and even now, when I was wrestling, when you were wrestling, and today, the sport itself gets better.
Yes.
Dramatically better.
Every year.
My son's like, record wise, had good career and all that, but my sons, all of them are way better than I was. As far as their techniques gotten better, the sport's gotten better.
Yes.
I would argue that actually the psychology of it's gotten a lot better. Because it used to be just kind of knuckle dragging, tough guy, right? The Dan Gable era was just tough, grit, good stuff. Yeah. And then now you have a little more cerebral, a little more mindset, growth mindset.
Hey, look, we're going to work on this particular technique because X, Y, and Z.
Yeah.
And then, I don't remember like learning it that way. I remember learning it. I was fortunate enough. I had two collegiate coaches. They both wrestled in college. I was lucky, right? And I remember running 2-on-1 on top rides or wrist rides, and I remember him distinctly saying, he's like, "Hey, look, no one else does it, so it's gonna be hard for him to." And that was probably the most like strategic part I remember of practice. I remember playing around a lot.
Yeah, right? Trying stuff out.
Yeah,
right.
but like, and I remember like. I don't remember like the way my son and how I teach kids now, like setting up series of moves and like you learn a series, you learn this technique and you use it and you say this happened, that happened, this. I don't remember that. I remember it's like, hey, look, use this move.
Yeah, and we got it's like you drill this move. We had the year we went from kind of nothing to winning state with a guy who was former Marine Corps wrestler, and it was 100 single leg shots, 100 double leg shots, 100 high Cs every match, and we were like 100. And we got good at those things.
Right.
But the flow wasn't what you see today. And anyways, it's cool to see the evolution of something as it gets. And I also think it helps the kids when you're teaching them there's a strategic way to win a physical battle.
Yes.
Right. It's not just all strength. It's not just all speed. You look at the Penn State and the people who are just more cerebral in the way they think about it, and especially the growth mindset that. The fundamental difference, I think, in business, in sports, music, if you're improving. Are we improving today?
Yes.
Win, lose, whatever, but did we improve? Did we learn? Did we grow?
One thing, right? It's like, and not trying to do it all at once.
Yeah.
Not trying to do it all at once. It's a slow progress, right?
How do you teach that idea to kids, adults also? How do you teach the basic idea of don't overestimate the event, don't underestimate the day-to-day of just building those habits, the patterns, the habits, and to enjoy it?
I try to remind them that your rewards and your medals are in the progress, is in the journey. It's in the journey and not the end product, right? Like it's the journey. It's everything that happened in between. Because winning is going to be a byproduct of you doing everything in between. That's what it's going to be, right? So I try to reward the stuff in between. So that's what got me really, really, really focused on it being like beat the streets itself, right?
Yeah.
Like when I first came down here, Like there was no wrestling club.
What brought you down here?
So I have two boys, right? Two boys. My oldest son, Damasio, he has autism, right? I'm a teacher in Chicago, right? We fast forward. I'm a teacher now, and I'm coaching football. I'm coaching wrestling, and the way Chicago public schools is set up, like their special education classrooms, like will lump, like a plethora of kids in the class. So you're gonna have 20, 25 kids who are in a special education class, right? And my son was 5, 6 years old, 7 years old, and he's in there with a kid that's in 8th grade. And that kid may have his IEP may read different than my son's IEP. My son's, at that age, he's not very verbal. And, what happens, it's a safety issue. What happens if that kid who's a behavior disorder, flips out and, hits my son or something like that?
And was special education a broad spectrum, or was it people on the spectrum? Was it like everybody who has any kind of special needs?
Yes, there you have it. Because even then there's a teacher shortage.
How do you teach like that?
You can't.
Okay.
You can't.
It's babysitting.
And that wasn't, and I knew that as a teacher. And his particular teacher he had at that particular school she was doing her best. She was out getting donations. She was trying to do all she can to get those things, the resources in for those kids. And she was just in a situation, and the school was just in a situation where they couldn't effectively provide the resources all of those kids needed in that classroom. And not everybody were blessed with the situation that I had. I was in a situation, and I created a situation myself that if I didn't like the circumstances, I can then remove myself from it. And that's pretty much what got me. My coach, he was already down here, and he was sending me text messages like, "Yo, it's 90 degrees and sunny here. How about there?"
People aren't still locked in masks.
I was like, man, and
it's 21 or 20. When did you? 2021 or 22? When did you move down here?
I came down here in 2014, 2015.
Oh, why did I think it was? Okay.
No, I've been here for like a long time.
Oh, I'm an old time.
Well, I guess it's a long time, right? How long was it? 10 years? 10 years? It seemed like
it's 10 years.
It seemed like it's been stuck on 10 years. I always say 10 years, but I've been saying 10 years for 10 years.
One of us is old.
Yeah. Yes.
I probably got a number or two on you,
right? I'm hiding the snowball.
I'm just a kid.
So he's telling me, and he sends me these. I sent off for the guides and all this other good stuff, and I have the option. A lot of people don't know this as well. I had the option to be Austin Police Department and teaching. So that's
quite a combination.
Yeah, so I fill out the paperwork. They hit me back immediately. All right, but also in May I come down for a job fair, and I get called for the job fair, and the school that calls me for the job fair is Lhasa High School, right? Language Arts Science Academy, right? It's one of the top schools in the country, actually, right? And I credit all that to is my computer science history. They were big on that project. They was like, "Yo, this guy's good." So I come down, and it's a purple school. It's a purple school, and I come down and I go, "Is this Lhasa?" And my mentor, right now to this day, Sheila Henry, she goes, "Lhasa? This is LBJ." Just like that, right? And I go, well, I don't know anything. I'm from Chicago. Right. She's like, "Let me see what you got." They stood me up, actually, because they didn't come to the fair. They called me to come down. Lhasa did, yeah. They stood me up. So they were supposed to be at the fair, and they weren't there. So I'm thinking because Lhasa and LBJ, they both were in the same school at the time. So LBJ came, but Lhasa didn't, and I ended up going to LBJ's table and giving Miss Henry all my information and stuff like that, and she saw it, and right then and there she goes, "You're hired."
Okay, first time I've spent almost 15 years in talent acquisition, recruiting companies all over the world. First time I met somebody who is really good at what they do that got their opportunity at a fair, at a job fair. Because actually, that may not be true. That's my perception. So for people who are like, "I don't know if I want to do this again. I don't know if I want to do that. Or I got to go work this booth."
No, go to it.
It's golden.
Matter of fact, I think we have a job fair for Austin ISD.
Yeah, that's fantastic. And also her initiative, her mindset probably was you had some kind of these guys are decent, I should have the conversation.
Yeah,
right?
It because I did my research before, and in my mind, LBJ is the closest thing to home. It's why I got into teaching. You know, it's why I wanted to be able to do the same thing that my coaches did for me.
Yeah.
You know, for other people, right? You know, coming home from a wrestling tournament at 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night, I have to take that hour and a half bus ride. And my coach say, "Nah, get in my car. I'm driving you home. What you want to eat?" And he feeding us, and he's driving me home, make sure I'm safe.
Yeah.
Like people, you would never know how much that meant. Like no one, like unless you've been in that situation, like because you know that this bus ride. I may not have no shoes. Come back to school Monday.
Yeah, you're every time you're at risk every time.
Yeah,
Thank you.
So I'm sitting back looking and stuff like that on the bus and stuff like that, and he's able to, like, just being able to do that, is like I wanted to be able to give back and do that.
Yeah, I mean, I see that, and first of all, that it says a lot about your character that it's not like I'm out, I'm good. And a lot of people do that in life.
Yeah.
They've escaped a bad situation or different, whatever, and they're just like home free.
Yeah.
Others go back into the building, so to speak, right? And I think that's one of the stories that really I first heard about Beat the Streets was, I think it was a girl, I think there might have been morning practices. I remember someone picking her up from an apartment, no adult in the apartment, no food, jean shorts is all she had.
Yes.
And yet somebody cares enough to stop by every day, bring her to practice, make sure that, she's mentored along the way and made a lot of positive life choices. And I'm like, you know what, so I worked with a lot of nonprofits in a corporate,
right.
what do you want to call it? Corporate responsibility, whatever thing.
Right.
And when it's all said and done, there's a lot more said than done.
Yes.
And I saw an organization that, like, these kids have a opportunity. They can screw it up or they can take it. And they have people who want to invest in them. And that's, it takes a lot. It takes a lot there's people who go for 2 weeks to Honduras and build a house for Habitat. It's great.
Right.
That's awesome. But it's not like dedicating your life to it, in sports and in school. So, I appreciate that too, because I think one thing that you and I have talked about is I don't think our capacity for compassion is unlimited. Right. I think it is to some degree. Mm-hmm. We want to, but I didn't grow up in your situation. I can empathize to some degree, but I can't have the same personal impact that you can. I can do everything that I can, but I don't have the credibility. I grew up in rural poverty. Mm-hmm. Well, rural poverty is very different.
Yes.
And until you've seen it and understood it, people are like, that's not real. And so you can't relate to it. Right. And people say, like, well, it's a bus, it's fine. No, you're not. No. And the same thing. So there's a lot of mental illness stuff. There's a lot of opioid abuse. There's all these things in different places have different levels of risk, different levels of whatever you want to call it. And then if we look in the U.S. and we look at our situations, and then you go to like some countries where there's significant, food deprivation, crime of like taking entire villages out. I mean, there's stuff that we can't even relate to here. So we have it easy relative to that. So this idea of, I think, creating, a world where we have the capacity to empower each other.
Yes.
I'm curious about your thoughts on, I feel concerned that in the interest of virtue signaling, we oversimplify the concepts of diversity, inclusion. It's like, okay, fine, those are words and it's fine.
Right.
But if I say, I'm going to say all these words and so therefore I'm fine, I go to these events, I'm fine, I don't think it gets to the heart of being...
And I totally get what you're saying, because that's why, like, when I came here, like I said, I came there and I saw a group of kids who were in need of they wanted to be good. They wanted to be in that arena, but they didn't have the resources that other kids had.
Yeah.
Right? But then when creating that club for these Austin ISD kids or these kids in Austin ISD, there were kids in Leander. It was like, well, I don't have that either.
Yeah.
And then there's kids in Liberty Hill. It's like, I don't have that. And then there's kids in and Killeen, and they're like, I don't have that. There's kids in Temple, and they're like, I don't have that, right? And you hear these other cities, right? You say Austin. Austin is the inner city, or that's the urban area, right? So that's who it's like, no, like you said, there's rural kids, right? Because I taught in that quote unquote suburban area. And no, these kids are everywhere. And it's not just financial, right? It's emotional, right? It's academic. It's all of these things. It's everything under this umbrella of where if I don't have support, you know what I'm saying, that I become, you know, the have not. Because I can have all the money in the world, but if I just feel like I'm not loved or I know someone care about me, you know, what is that? What is that money for?
That's exactly right. And I think it's where this is one of the things that I love, you know, about the sport itself. And there's all kinds of ways to express love and to help people grow. But you can have, you know, now, you know, in Austin, we say inner city Austin, people in Chicago would laugh. It is kind of laughable relative to Chicago. You've seen the middle of it.
Yes.
And then, you know, go to Johannesburg. I mean, just it's levels of degrees of pain, but there are kids in Westlake and in Lake Travis, you know, areas that are they're wealthy areas, so to speak. And there's some kid, there's physical abuse, there's sexual abuse, there's drug abuse. There's a kid who's neglected and never seen because the parents have all their pretentious view on the outside, and this kid is raised by nothing, and they have these emotional needs, and they go psycho. Yes. And all of them have needs.
And to that point, right? You said that, right? You said that kid has all that stuff, right? But he doesn't have that emotional need. Like that kid may have his parents at every game. That kid may have his parents buy him everything he needs and everything, right? Right? But he doesn't feel like he's cared for. He doesn't feel his love. I'm the exact opposite. I know my mother loves me.
Yeah.
She wasn't able to. She maybe seen me play football twice, and she'd never seen me wrestle, right? But I knew she was there because you know why? She made sure all my uniforms were washed and clean. She made sure I came to practice every day with clean clothes, right? Even if she was in the bathtub, washing them with her hands, right? She made sure that I never missed a meet. She was like, "Hey, she wake me up. Don't you got somewhere to be at?" You're right, Mom. Let me get up. You know. So those types of things, like I excused her absence because I knew she couldn't make it. She's working this, that, and the third, but I knew that she had the support. So when I come home and I tell her about it, she'd be happy for me.
Your mom had to be proud. She had to be proud that you took her work ethic and character and choices.
Oh, I learned how to pay bills from her. I learned how to pay bills. She said, Randy, make sure your lights and your food and all that stuff is paid before you have anything. Kids tell me, my wife would tell you, she was like, why do you have clothes in your closet for 15 years ago? I was like, it's not very important to me. It's not very important. That's not important. What's important is that these lights come on every day.
That's exactly right. And I think, look, I think that's one of the things that I am an optimist. I choose to go through life with the pains of optimism because the pains of pessimism are constant.
Yes.
But I believe that there's way more people like you and I than there are about all this strife and anxiety and division. I just don't buy it at the core. In people's heart, I don't think they want that. I think they're being manipulated into it.
Yes.
And groups of people, politically, economic, power struggles, whatever, social media, is all pulling at people. But if you go walk out in nature for a minute, right here where we are, we have our neighborhood has a blackout policy at 10 p.m., no lights.
Right.
And so the stars are awesome. You come out here and you sit there and look at the stars for a half hour, and you put any other human on the planet in the same situation. I don't think there's that much difference.
No.
It's when we get all these other things stirring us up, and I think that we happen to meet in an environment where it's so conducive to who both you and I are, we have a great relationship.
Yes.
If we were in some sort of polarizing other situation, that may not be the case.
Right.
And we would never got a chance to know each other. So I appreciate you, man. I appreciate what you bring to the table, especially how much you're investing in these kids.
I appreciate it. I appreciate them. I tell the parents and the children all the time, I appreciate the journey, being part of the journey. You know, like the sweater is like the braids, right? This is actually was a gift after the state tournament from one of our wrestlers. She's going to Ottawa, and her dad and her bought me the.
That's awesome.
I saw her dad with the sweater. I said, "Man, that's nice." Yeah. And they got it for me, and it's like, "Thank you for everything" and stuff like that. And I just like those are the little things that you don't make it worthwhile. Like, right? Yeah. I have like people like you don't get into teaching for money. You don't. You know, like I remember my first year doing my internship. I still have it, the stack of papers, the thank you letters from the kids. Like, and if there's any like doubt, I'm like, I ever feel like, oh my God, why did I choose this or something like that? I open that up and I read them, and it's a lot of heartfelt stuff. And he's like, well, that's why you do it, Randy. That's why you do it, And I tell people, like, hey man, they be like, oh man, everybody loves me. Like, nah. For every one person that loves me, there's about 3 that hate me.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, right. You're not doing anything if you don't. But I also think, one of the things I think a responsibility we all have is that, some people think, well, teachers, coaches, and all that, I don't have kids, I can't relate, whatever. It's like, oh, no, hold on. The community.
Yes.
This is investment adds multi-generational. And I think probably the most telltale thing for me with the Beat the Streets is you and I both get involved in, we're excited about growing it. But your initial club name, Heart and Pride.
Yes.
That is the essence, clearly of what Beat the Streets is, but heart and pride, I'm sure that came from pretty deep inside of you, but it's something that I see you personify with these kids, and I appreciate it.
Thank you. I appreciate it. And that's the goal. Like Mike Powell and Boyd and all my friends back home in Chicago, with talking with them and, just being with them, they saw the alignment that, what I kind of already been through and what we've been through as being, kids of Chicago, it aligned with it. So it was real easy to make the transition from what we have, Heart and Pride, to Beat the Streets Austin. Yeah. Like it's real simple. We've already built the infrastructure. We already have the kids. We have situations where, we have multiple schools in Austin ISD having practice outside of their regular high school practice. We have a centralized location. We have our own facility. We're totally independent of anybody else's structure. We have over 150 members.
That's awesome.
Yeah, so like it's real simple, the alignment, and what we're doing right now is we're just trying to really replicate everything that's like already done, like in Chicago with their facility and their visionaries and all of those good things. And that's like I said, we've done 90% of the work. The other part is now.
Well, exactly. And so the wrestling community, will wrap up with this. I have this vision that I start to see coming together, that we're a pretty distributed group. Like you said, we're the blue collar of the sports. Yes. And every fundraising is decentralized. And so we have every club in the country. There's thousands of them. That have clubs and kids clubs. And then you have the elite clubs. You have, here you have 3F, you have 512, you have Izzy Style, those and great clubs, but they're all separate. And you have the regional training centers. You have, Kendall up in New York, and you have awesome people everywhere. And it's USA Wrestling separate over here. Hey, Flo, like the unifying from a kid is introduced to the concept of the sport all the way through the progression to the most elite in the world. We are a community that really could and should be a lot more unified, in my opinion.
Yes.
And this is why you're doing that here. You are aligned with the high schools. You're aligned with 3F. You're aligned with the leadership.
Yes.
And so that's, I think, is starting to come together, and we'll need to do that nationally. We have a lot of work to do because there's so much decentralization.
Yes.
And we don't need a pope, but we need fundraising efficiency to develop kids in the sport, regardless of their socioeconomic status.
So everyone can have the opportunity that we're blessed to have.
So they can be as awesome as you. And as fun as me.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks, man.